Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Tristan and I am a librarian with the Ottawa Public Library. Tonight's presentation is the final program in the Ottawa Urban Wildlife Series, examining topics such as Ottawa bird species, the biodiversity of our wildlife, Ottawa species at risk, and how to appreciate wildlife safely. You can check out the Ottawa Public Library's Facebook page for past presentations. It is important to acknowledge that even though as we gather virtually, we are on the unceded ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. We honor the contributions of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, their elders and their ancestors, and we recognize their important contribution, past and present. Tonight's presenter is by Patty McLaughlin from the Ottawa Valley Wild Bird Care Centre. The Ottawa Valley Wild Bird Care Centre is the only place in the Ottawa Valley area dedicated to the care and treatment and rehabilitation of sick, injured, and orphaned wild birds. Patty first became involved with the Wild Bird Care Centre at the age of 16 as a volunteer. She continued to work as a summer student for 5 years as she completed her BSc in zoology at Laurentian University. She then completed her Master's of Science at Carleton University before returning to the Bird Center, where she has been caring for the birds as well as developing and running their education outreach program for the last 10 years. In 2013, Patty received the Elizabeth Leggett Award in recognition for her outstanding contributions to the public awareness and care for wild birds. Patty's passion to educate others about birds and natural world also led her to create a young naturalist program for the Mississippi Valley Field Naturalist. Now in its 9th year, the successful program continues to fill to its maximum capacity with nature-loving 6 to 11-year-olds. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello to everyone. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about the center and the birds in your backyard. I'm going to be flipping between just me talking with my assistant behind me, which he'll get his grand entrance in a minute, as well as sharing my screen. So obviously I'm not at the Wild Bird Care Center, but I hope to give you a glimpse of what it does look like inside through pictures and videos. So if you do have a question, we are going to do a question period at the end, but if you don't want to forget your question, throw it in the chat. There's definitely some assistance from the Ottawa Public Library helping me keep track of the questions. So hopefully we can answer everything by the end of the evening. So I'm just going to share my screen now and I'm going to start talking about the center, and then we're going to dive into the birds in your backyard and how to recognize them, how to help them, and things like that. So, one second. So as mentioned, we are the only place here in Ottawa that cares for wild birds that have become injured or sick. So we are a charitable organization. We don't get any major government funding to do the work that we do. We are funded by supportive people like you. And we do operate under permits from the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, as well as Canadian Wildlife Services. We are lucky that all of our birds are protected by law. This really protects them from people who want to kill them for not great purposes like they used to in the old days, and put their feathers on their hats and things like that and collect their eggs for different collections. But this does mean we need permission to do the work we do, and it does mean that people are not allowed to do the work that we do without permission. So you're not allowed to care for wild birds on your own. So we are very lucky here in Ottawa to have us, and we have been around in Ottawa for 40 years now. The center first started with a name that I think many of people recognize when I talk to adult groups, Kathy Nihai. Unfortunately, we lost Kathy in 2009, but we certainly carry on her important work with love in our heart and fond memories of her. And this is the bird that started it all. This is Pip, a hummingbird that was found on her neighbor's driveway, and her neighbor knew Kathy loved people and animals, and she brought this hummingbird over to Kathy, and she cared for it and was able to release it in the spring. And that's all it took to start the Ottawa Valley Wild Bird Care Center, because that neighbor told the next neighbor, who told their mother-in-law's sister-in-law's uncle, and everyone brought birds to Kathy's house. She was located in Nepean on Majestic Drive. And I've spoken to old neighbors. She filled her basement with birds, her bedrooms, her backyards, until it just became too much. So in 1991, we moved to where we are today, which is 734 Moody Drive. And we are in the woods along the beautiful NCC Beaver Trail, which is a lovely trail to walk. Many people in the West End have gone to feed chickadees out of their hand and observe the wild turkeys. And we are that cabin in the woods that you walk by. And it's inside where we do all the important work for birds. But we have an amazing vision that is really close to coming true, that we are fundraising right now for a new advanced care facility. So unfortunately, COVID has kind of delayed the build of this. We have bought land off Highway 7, where we're going to be moving to, and our fundraising campaign is doing very well, and we're in like the last stages to get the rest of the funding done. So it's a $1.7 million project to build this advanced care facility, and we need it. We need the more space. We need the outside flight rooms. So that's the future, hopefully in the next year, which is really exciting for us. We are open every single day of the year. Birds need us there every day, and we take care of over 4,000 birds that people bring us. So who are they? For a bird to get to us, it needs to be injured, and someone needs to be able to catch it, people like you. So it's no surprise that our most common faces are the ones you see in your backyard, in the park. So the robins and starlings and crows and pigeons. After I say that, you might be surprised that every year we see over 120 different species every single year. And they come in all shapes and sizes, all ages. And no, we don't always know what they are. There's a bird on there right now that's smaller than a quarter. His eyes aren't open, doesn't have feathers. So we can narrow it down to maybe a sparrow or a finch, but then it's like a little present. We have to wait till he grows up to see what exactly he is. And throughout our 40-year history, we have had some strange birds. The most famous was Alicia the flamingo, who ended up in Ottawa in 1997. So yes, Ottawa has had a flamingo. Because birds fly, they follow the waterways. You never know what's going to walk in through the front door, which makes our work, very exciting for us, because we get to help all these unique birds. And it's certainly always very special when we can help an endangered bird or a threatened bird and get that bird back to the wild. So what can we do? So we do offer medical treatment. We do offer different medicines depending on what the bird needs. We can put little casts on broken wings and broken legs. But I think the most important thing that we offer these birds is good food and rest. When you're a wild animal and you've been compromised because of injury or illness, you're not going to last long out there. There's predators looking for you. So some birds only need to be with us for a few days. Some birds are with us for a few months. Some birds are with us for a whole year before they're ready to go back to the wild. And we keep track of them all. If you've ever brought a bird to the center, you can ask for the reference number. And we mark all our birds with a very scientific piece of hockey tape that has their case number, and we keep track of them throughout our care. So we are able to give you updates on the bird that you brought in, which is pretty cool. I mean, throughout this whole presentation, I really hope that obviously you guys already like birds, but if anyone has any doubt about how awesome birds are, I hope this presentation, fosters an interest, because as soon as we become interested in something and care about something, that's when we want to start helping them more. And that's what it's all about. So right now, it's baby season. Right now, it is our busiest month of the year at the center. We get over 4,000 birds in a year. January, we might get 50 new birds in that month. This month, we have just reached over 1,000 birds this month. So each day we're receiving anywhere between 50 and 60 birds every single day. Most of them are very young. And so this is kind of what the center looks like. We are chock filled with incubators, which are filled with tiny nests, which are filled with bundles of joy. And as a volunteer or summer student looking after these baby birds, you are outfitted with a timer. which goes off about every 20, maybe 30 minutes if you're lucky. And that's your time to feed all of the hungry mouths you are in charge of. So you go around and you feed them little mouthfuls of crickets, all of our specialized diets. We're making sure they're getting all the vitamins and proteins and nutrients they need to grow up fast and strong. And then you have to clean all of those little paper towels and napkins underneath, because every time you feed a baby bird, it then poops. And we do need to make sure all of these incubators are very clean, their feathers are very clean. So yeah, you go around, you feed, you clean, you get to the kitchen, wash all your feeding utensils, warm up new food, and then feed again. It's really busy day, but it's super enjoyable and very, very rewarding to be able to save these little lives. We have a very small staff at the center, but we do hire additional summer students throughout the summer. So anyone listening who knows of anyone going into veterinary care, vet tech, or any interest in that field, any interest in the biology field, this is a fantastic summer job for them. You get a lot of hands-on work with the birds. You learn a ton of things that will definitely help you in your career. Beyond our small staff and additional summer students, we do rely very heavily on our volunteers. Now, unfortunately, COVID has kind of put a pause to our volunteer program, but we're just starting it up now as things are getting more positive and safe. So we're hoping to welcome back a lot of volunteers. And volunteers range from 16-year-olds all the way up to retirees with just an interest in birds. So there's lots of places people can help the birds. And of course, the most rewarding part is when we can get all of these birds back to the wild. So depending on the species, we either pack them up all together in a flock. If these are birds that might be migrating, we release them with your friends. A bunch of redpolls and finches, juncos were in there. I'm so happy. I love putting it in slow motion because they leave their release box so quickly. But certainly this is the goal for every single bird that comes into our care. And you know, I had a young girl that asked me, it's like, I know that's what you want to do, but how do you feel about releases? And I thought that was such a sweet question coming from a little girl. And to be honest, I have very mixed feelings every time I do a release because I'm very happy that we're able to release these birds and they're back in the wild and that's where they belong. But at the same time, they're back in the wild with all of those dangers and they have to find food for themselves and they're no longer under my safety at the center and we're not taking care of them anymore. So it is kind of a mixed feeling. And I think when my son grows up and leaves my house for university or wherever he's going with his life, I think it'll be very much the same feeling. Some birds we do release on their own. Any birds that may have a territory or going back to where they came from. So this owl was just recently released. Was in our care for just over a month after being hit by a car. So hopefully he recognizes where he came from and is able to find his family again quite quickly. That was a golden release video. They don't always look that good. They don't always do that look back and circle around, but we love those ones because we think they're saying thank you for sure. Of course, I am here with a bird who is not in the wild. Indigo is with me. Indigo is an American kestrel, and Indigo can unfortunately not be released back to the wild. So what happened to Indigo is that we could tell that he broke his wing in 3 different places, just by the way his bones feel now. But his wing was already healed by the time he got to the center. So back to us having to have special permits to do the work that we do. It is illegal to do this work on your own. And one of the reasons is because it takes a lot of training and specialization to be able to fix these birds properly. So Indigo's wing has healed crooked, and since the beginning, he was not as wild as he should be. He didn't show the proper amount of fear of people. So he is our education ambassador. So Indigo travels with me on a typical year to over 100 different schools and groups throughout the city to educate kids and other people about birds in the center and share his story that, you know, even though you think you're trying to to help birds by taking care of them yourself. It's really not what's best for them. It's really not the right thing to do. But if we could spread the word that we do exist, and the thing to do is bring them to us as soon as you can, then we can help more birds. So Indigo is also the one behind all of the Junior Avian Ambassador pins and certificates that we award children. So we have 10 missions to encourage kids to help birds in their backyard. And we really firmly believe that, the work that we do is, we're kind of like the goalie of the team, right? When all else has failed and the bird has become injured, yes, that's when they need our help. But there is so much that can be done in your backyards, in your communities. And if everyone does a little bit, then we can help a lot of birds. So education is very much a part of what we do as well. And Indigo helps with that. We have lots of fun every single year. So on that note, let's talk about what we can do. What can we do in the birds in our backyard? How do we make our backyard safer? What can we do to foster our love for birds? I haven't convinced you already with cute videos. I've got more. So let's take a look at why birds come into the center. Adult birds come into the center for 3 major reasons: cats, cars, and windows. So for all you cat owners out there, I know I'm not going to convince you all to keep your cats inside. There are some things that we can do, maybe even just for a short time during the year, during baby season, when these baby birds are learning to fly. If you're able to keep your cat in for half the time that you used to, that's going to make a difference. People have done some really extraordinary things, like building a catio, which is really cool, keeping your cat on a leash. But the most important message I want to give you, any cat owners out there, dog owners as well, if a bird has been in a cat's or animal's mouth, its life is in danger. A bird's skin is as thin as tissue paper. It doesn't always bleed. If there has been a puncture or scratch through the skin, that's where the bacteria gets in. Most of the cat attacks that we see aren't because there's broken wings or broken legs. It's because they have infections. So if you are suspicious that a bird has been in contact with a cat, please bring it into our care. So I think, and I really do believe this, that we start learning about birds because we care about them. And the more, we kind of have our favorites, right? The ones you recognize are more your favorites, and you want to help them more maybe. So I'm just going to show you a very quick tool called Merlin ID. This is an app for your phone, or it's on the website. So I'm just going to switch over and share what the website looks like. Because I think if you start to learn what you're seeing in your backyard, and then if you learn cool facts, then maybe you'll want to help it more. If you learn where it nests, then maybe you'll be on the lookout for nests in your backyard and be more aware. So if you go to the website, allaboutbirds.org, you can launch the Merlin ID program, where, as I said, it is an app for your phone or device, and it works all across North America. When you download the app, it'll ask you to download your location pack. So we're here in Eastern North America. And then it's going to ask you 5 questions to help identify the bird. So this app basically does all the hard work of a field guide for you. So first question is, where did you see the bird? Your phone knows where you are, so that's probably going to get answered for you anyways. So I'm going to put in Ottawa. And when did you see the bird? Today's date is already there. So this is going to play a role if you're trying to identify a bird you saw 3 months ago, right? Because our birds do migrate. And here comes the 3 really hard questions. So let's try an easy one. Everyone picture a robin, let's say. So you have to go by size. Was it a goose size, a crow size, a robin size, or a sparrow size? And there's some in-betweens as well. So you can go robin size. And then it wants you to pick 3 colors. You don't have to pick 3, just up to 3. So you try to pick the colors that really stand out in your mind. So for a robin, their back is kind of brownish or blackish. And of course, their chest is kind of orange. I mean, buff, brown, orange. We'll see what we get. So 3 colors, there we go. And then what the bird was doing. This really narrows down habitat. Was it eating at your feeder? Was it on the ground? Did you see it in the forest? So I'm going to say this robin was on the ground. And that's it. That's all the 5 questions you have to answer. You click next, and the most magical thing happens. It shortlists the possibilities of birds that you saw. It's going to put its best guess at the top. There we are. We have our robin. We can look at the list. It's going to give us some other birds with similar colors and sizes. Our answers are down here. If we don't see our bird, we can edit them. But there's our bird right there. We can go and click on them, and that's where we get to see more pictures. What does a male look like versus a female? What does a young robin look like versus an adult? Maybe they look different depending on the area you're in. And if you say, yes, that's my bird, yippee, good for you. You can go to the Beautiful Species account where it's filled with cool facts and all of their like nesting habits, where they nest, how many eggs they lay, things like that. It's a really simple program to use or app to use, and it really gives you a jump start into birding. And it's simple enough, for kids to use to answer those questions as well. So I encourage you to try it out. And just this past week, they actually announced that you can go out, kind of like Shazam, but for bird calls. You can go out with Merlin now and record that bird call that you don't know what it is, and it's going to give you your best guess as well. So let's talk more about backyard birds. So we've got a tool now that can identify them, so we can learn more about them, which is great. So I'm just going to go through kind of some of the major questions that I typically get, and different solutions to problems and things people can do in their backyards. So let's start with some simple ones. Simple ones that if you own property, I think everyone could do this. And I think number one thing right now is just to be respectful. This is nesting season. April to September is nesting season. And I think this is just a time to be aware that birds are nesting, keep our ears and eyes open to their movements, where they might be nesting. Certainly, we don't want to cut down trees or nesting habit at this time of the year. And I'll tell you a story that chickadees nest inside of tree cavities, so inside tree holes like woodpeckers, and they may nest in that dead stump you have in the corner of your yard. They don't need to be high up in a tree. So you never know what might be nesting in your yard, but if we just pay a little bit more attention, we might be more aware. And if I haven't convinced you that chickadees are super cute, take a load of these guys. I love chickadee babies because they look like chickadees right away. Baby birds sometimes look very dull colors compared to the adults, but chickadees look like baby chickadees. They sound like baby chickadees. They're very sweet, energetic birds. I told you, every time you feed a baby bird, it poops. Here's my proof. It's a lot of cleaning. And if you're wondering if you have a chickadee territory in your yard, I want you to listen for one thing: their favorite food. They say it over and over and over again. They go, cheeseburger. And now that if you hear it once, it'll be stuck in your head. So sorry, not sorry. But they do whistle it. They go. And that is their territory call. So if you hear a lot of cheeseburgers, chances are you've got chickadees nearby. If you have a pool in your backyard or window wells to your house, this is the time of year that we do see a lot of birds kind of exploring and get stuck in these places. So observing these places, checking on them often, and maybe even installing a small ramp. So if you're not home, they can get out on their own. And birds love lazy gardeners. So just sit back, relax, let things overgrow. Obviously, things like using pesticides, we don't like to hear, but just letting things overgrow is helping a lot. This is providing shelter, it's providing food for them, especially come at the end of the summer and into the fall. Goldfinches are very strict vegetarians. I'll talk about them in a minute, but leaving these deadheads up all winter is a huge food source for not only these guys, but there's a lot of insects that have laid eggs, and there's grubs in there. So just leave your garden up till next year. And song sparrows are pretty loud in your backyard. I'm sure a lot of people will recognize a song sparrow. Again, these guys may not nest too high off the ground. So they might be in long grasses or that brush pile you've ignored. So if you've ignored it until now, we're in the middle of nesting season, just keep ignoring. Is this little guy. This is a baby song sparrow currently in care. He's really working hard at getting a habit of swallowing these big grubs we keep feeding him, but it's been a little bit of work with him. Just gotta line him up. There we go, properly. And down the hatch it goes. Bird feeders. What do I put in them? When do I put them up? When do I take them down? Are they good? Do they prevent birds from migrating? All of these awesome questions are fantastic for the bird shops we do have in Ottawa. Wild Birds Unlimited is a really great one. But basically, if you're keeping up bird feeders consistently, you will get more birds. But be aware that bird feeders are work. We do need to take care of them. You wash your dishes after every meal. We have to think of bird feeders as a food server. This food can get moldy. It can harvest disease and germs, so please wash them. A 10-to-1 bleach solution is preferred to kill off everything in there. So 10 parts water, 1 part bleach. And do monitor for sick birds. So these finches have something called mycoplasma, which is kind of like a really bad sinus infection. It causes swelling to eyes, discharge from the nose. So if you have bird feeders, I imagine it's because you want to watch the birds. So keep an eye out for ones that aren't doing well and try to capture them to get them out of the population before they spread more germs. And we can certainly help these birds recover. And people ask, when do you put them up? When do you put them down? Right now, most birds are eating insects. Even the things like chickadees are feeding their babies insects. But what's not going to eat insects are these finches, the beautiful goldfinches. They are the strictest of vegetarians. So the finch feeders with the small seeds are kind of the best to leave up all year round. And squirrels don't like these feeders. So if you're worried about nuisance animals like squirrels, if you put fruit out, anything's going to come for it, but they don't have a preference for these. And these guys nest late in the summer. We're not going to see baby goldfinches until the middle of August, and we call them bee poops. So how small are these guys? Look at these guys. They're on a 3 goldfinches on 1 Q-tip. Now you know. How many people does it take to change a light bulb? I don't know, but I know that 3 goldfinches can fit on 1 Q-tip. If you're putting up other feeder types, like nectar feeders, both for the orioles and the hummingbirds, making your own nectar is really easy. It's 1 part sugar, so white sugar, regular white sugar, and 4 parts water. They don't need that red color. They do prefer it, but we don't want to add dyes to their diets. So red feeders kind of attract them, or you can even put something red nearby, like a big Christmas bow. But please keep in mind that direct heat and sunlight on a day like today is very hot, and the nectar does spoil quickly, and that could possibly make them ill. So we do get really hot days like this. Please change the nectar quite frequently, every maybe 2 or 3 days, and try to hang your feeder up in the shade. Where do we put our feeders? So there's a couple concerns here. So number 1 is window impact. So they say either really close to your window, and the theory behind that is that if a bird gets frightened from the feeder, they're not going to be able to get enough speed to really harm themselves if they do run into your window. Or you want to be really far from your window. So if they do get spooked, hopefully they will kind of figure themselves out before they get to your house and be able to navigate around the window. So closer than 3 feet or way more than 10 feet. in that middle zone is kind of the most dangerous. And I don't know what scientist is out there measuring how far a squirrel can jump, but apparently a squirrel-proof zone is 10 feet. So if you are 10 feet from any object, a squirrel can't jump on your feeder. But then you have troubles of squirrels climbing up poles and things like that. But there's different products for that. Nothing is 100% successful. And you want to keep your feeder where you like to see the birds, because the more we're watching your feeder, the better chance we are going to see those sick birds, and remind ourselves that we need to fill up our feeders and clean our feeders if it's noticeable and somewhere nearby. Cats are around everywhere, unfortunately, so just try to limit your ground feeders. That's where cats are kind of getting birds the most, is right off the ground. And try to keep it in an open area. Cats are able to hide in bushes and gardens and under hedges. So keeping it a distance away kind of increases the sight line for birds to be able to see them before they come around and pounce. Here in Ottawa, we have a really awesome organization called Safe Wings Ottawa. They patrol a lot of the problem buildings downtown. They have lots of volunteers out every day. And they do a lot of research and education about window impacts. So there are products. I recommend checking out their webpage, because it's just chock full of information. But over the time, we've realized that, those one or two hawk decals don't work. We really need to be putting our decals very close together on the windows, and they need to be on the outside of window. Anything to protect birds from hitting the window has to be on the outside, and that's to break up the reflection and glare. So they really do say every 2 inches we should have a decal to identify the windows. And so these dots are feather friendly, and it looks like a lot in this picture, but once you've installed this in your house, looking out your window, you don't notice this. And these strings, Acopian blinds, is another way to really identify your windows to birds. If a bird has hit your window, and we're always learning, that's the great thing about rehab. Years ago we used to say, leave the bird be if it's in a safe spot, but not anymore. Safe Wings volunteers have really noticed that predators wait. Predators have learned that birds hit windows. So don't just leave them be. Please go out and put them in a safe spot. Put them in a box before a predator gets to them. And then please contact Safe Wings so they can instruct you further. They provide excellent care for window impacts. And we used to say, if the bird looks good, let it go. But their research has really found that birds are able to fly off maybe right away, but then an hour later they're really not doing well. So we're really liking to see these birds that have hit a window at least get to our care or their care for 48 hours to make sure that they are okay. Not all injuries show up all at once. So let's talk about some birds that might be nesting on your house. I think the most likely culprits are robins. So these guys nest, this is on a downspout for an eaves trough. Sometimes they nest on the wreath on your front door. Sometimes they nest in that hanging basket. They make their nest out of grasses and muds. As I've alluded to before at the beginning of the presentation, our birds are protected. Most species are. So it really is illegal to take down this nest if there's a bunch of eggs and babies in it. So my message to you is that from the first egg that's laid to when the babies leave the nest, it's only going to be about a month. So I really hope you can consider what you can do to just, maybe delay your renovation or just alter your habits a little bit to allow this nest to happen and these babies to live happily and leave the nest. And you know what? Songbirds actually take their baby's poop away from the nest. So if you're worried about a mess from a robin's nest, it's not going to happen. It's gross to think about, but it's very smart for mama bird because she doesn't want her nest to smell. She doesn't want a big pile of poop underneath the nest. That's going to be a sign to predators that there's a nest there. So every time a baby robin poops, mama actually picks up that package and flies it away from her nest and drops it somewhere else. Now, Mama Robin has noticed you as well. She's noticed that you walk your dog in the morning and go out your front door and you run your barbecue on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she's okay with that. If you consider it from a robin's perspective, your house is a pretty safe place. There are a lot less predators around your house than there would be in the middle of the forest. So she's taking advantage of not only a great structure, but a smaller chance of predation for her babies. Baby robins are very cute. I have to say, a personal favorite at the center. They're very polite babies. Birds all have their own personalities. Robins are very polite and they wait their turn to be fed, and they've got cute little spots. So if I haven't convinced you already, here's your cute robin video. And that's about a baby bird's life. They wait until they're fed and then they have a nap. I'll say this a couple times before we leave today, but baby birds leave the nest before they can fly. So these robins are actually old enough to be out of the nest, but they're not going to fly well like mom and dad. So if you do have a robin's nest, one of the best things you could do is just kind of observe, know when these babies are going to be leaving, and be very respectful and aware of where they might be in your yard. Maybe you keep your dog in or take them for a walk that day instead of letting out in the backyard. And that would be such a big help for mom and dad. They'll start moving on, they'll jump up in small branches and learn to fly quickly. But the first couple of days out of the nest, yeah, they're pretty awkward and will stay in one spot for a long period of time, waiting for mom or dad to come by to feed them. The second nest that's likely on people's houses is the eastern phoebe. This can be attached to just a straight board. It doesn't need a platform. It's made with lots of mud and moss on the outside. And they might be even cuter than robins. They are a type of flycatcher. These guys are eating bugs, maybe mosquitoes. Definitely something you might want in your backyard. As I mentioned before, from the first egg that is laid, it's about a 2-week incubation, and then it's about 2 weeks until those babies are ready to leave the nest, which is pretty quick. But if you do really can't have a nest in a certain location, it's a fire hazard near a light, just be aware of what's going on. And as soon as you start seeing the first piece of grass, try to put up something that moves in the wind, like little windmills from the dollar store, that type of thing, just to make it a little bit uneasy for them. However, if you've kind of missed the boat and that nest and eggs are already there, you're just going to have to maybe wait that month. Now, birds that nest in your house. We can certainly understand that this is a big frustration, and prevention is key. So we do really need to go out every spring and inspect our property. So we're looking for any opening that might be 2 inches for European starlings. They love vents, drier vents. These flaps, they can open, no problem. So if you have these flaps around your house, these cage ones that go over the entire vent are about $10 at your local hardware store. And you want to look for any holes that you might have in your soffit or roof. These guys do make a pretty big nest, and unlike robins, they don't carry the poop away. So we understand that this can be a fire hazard in some locations, and we do need to remove the nest. Renesting is possible. We can take them out and put them in a temporary nest near the entrance location, and we do have instructions for that on our website. We certainly recommend you contact us so we can walk you through that. And house sparrows are the other one that are looking for holes in your house, or these are the ones that you see in like store signs all around town, and just a small little opening is enough for these guys to make their nest. Both of these species are not protected by the migratory bird law, so you don't need to worry too much about breaking laws when we're re-nesting them, but certainly we hope that everyone is very kind to these birds. And if you do hire a pest removal company, certainly ask them what their plan is and their practices for these birds. And re-nesting is very easy for these two species. It works quite often to get them out of your house and into a temporary location for those few weeks that they need before they leave the nest. Any balcony owners out there, pigeons love a cluttered balcony. They love any patio furniture you're leaving out there, boxes, planters, that's where they're looking to make their nests. So frequent your balcony, move stuff around occasionally, and that will kind of deter them from nesting. They lay 2 eggs, and it takes them a little longer to raise their young compared to robins and starlings. So it takes them close to a month. So it's a little bit longer on your balcony. And again, we understand it can be messy, but a simple solution is to put the whole nest, eggs and babies, in an open top cardboard box, something that's not too high. That way the whole nest is contained, all their mess is contained, and when they leave, you just throw out the whole box. And that might be all you need to do to convince your land, whoever's in charge of your building, if they're like, you need to clean up your balcony and get rid of those pigeons. That could be a potential compromise, hopefully, before you have to remove the whole family. Baby pigeons are very cute and they're very nice birds. We love them a lot. And here's your cute pigeon videos. They're almost like puppy dogs when they're young. They kind of follow us around looking for food until they become independent. We really hope to be the last resort for these cases. You know, try to keep them with mom and dad, try to re-nest them before just removing them and bringing them to us. As a charity, we are very limited in our resources. We've never turned a bird away in our 40-year history. We really don't want to, but just be aware that bringing in healthy birds does use a lot of our resources. So anything we could do to keep them with mom and dad is super awesome. Ducks. This is Margot. She is a mallard duck that nests at my friend's house in Barrhaven, just outside her front step. Mallard ducks, again, same theory as robins. Mallard ducks don't want to nest along a river. That's where all the predators are going. They follow the river beds and things like that. So they nest away from water. They lay 8 to 12 eggs. And what just blows my mind, is crazy, is that day 1, they lay an egg, and then maybe 10 days later, they lay their last egg. And that's when she starts incubating, and incubating full time. And all of those eggs hatch in a single day, which is incredible. Ducklings, unlike robins and the other birds we've been talking about, their eyes are open on day 1. They can walk on day 1, and they can feed themselves. So as soon as everyone is hatched and dried off and has their sea legs about them, mom walks them away to water. So if we have a duck nesting in your backyard, just give her space, respect her space, and just pretend she's not there. Margot actually had a skunk visit her nest 3 times this year, and she kept on nesting. The more we do to protect a nest, you know, if we put up fences around Margot and put signs, predators are watching. We have smart urban predators. Raccoons are very smart. So if they start noticing our activity, it's going to pique their interest. So just being aware of them, that they're there, and ignoring them and just letting them do their thing is the best thing you can do. Now, mom didn't think that if she nested in your fenced backyard, that her babies are not going to be able to fly for the first 2 months. So there are occasions that if they've nested in your backyard, you're going to need to open the gate and just show them the way out. Once mom leaves, once Margot left this day, she doesn't come back. She walks onto water to raise her young, and she won't return to this nest until next year. So the biggest thing right now is to understand when baby birds do not need help. I used to say, when a bird does need help and when it doesn't. But really, the message is when a bird does not need help, because a lot of people pick up these baby birds. They're naive. They can't fly very well yet. They might even walk up to you and open their mouths and ask for food. So, but these birds are okay to be out of the nest. So baby birds leave the nest before they can fly. If you think about it, this makes sense. A robin's nest is like this big, the size of the palm of my hand. There's 4 baby robins in there. There's no room to learn how to fly there. So they have to take this giant leap. Must be a very scary day for them. They jump out of the nest and then they have to start learning how to fly. So they flap their wings. They might be able to get up on small little branches. Mom and dad still come down to the ground to feed them. Now, mom and dad now have like 4 teenagers that don't listen. There's robins this way and that way, and they need to find them all every feeding. So it doesn't take long for mom and dad to come down to the ground and feed their baby. It would be very, very rare for them to abandon a baby bird. So if you are watching constantly and you don't blink for hours at a time and still don't see mom and dad, that might be a sign for concern. But often we can hear when mom and dad are feeding the babies. Babies are going to be quiet when they're not being fed. So they're going to be sitting in your yard, maybe having a nap, like that cute little robin we watched a little while ago, until mom and dad come close. Mom and dad's going to send out the signal, beep, beep, and then baby's going to answer, beep, beep. And then that beep, beep, beep is going to get louder and louder and faster. And then all of a sudden it's going to stop. And that was the feeding. That's all it took. So what we really want to encourage is to keep these fledglings, these birds that are fully feathered, learning how to fly, keeping them with mom and dad. So if a baby bird has all its feathers, now their tails are going to be short. If you think about that nest again, there's no room to fly. There's also no room to grow a tail. So baby birds grow their tail after they leave the nest. It's just too long. So short, stubby-tailed, fully feathered birds with their eyes open, bright-eyed, alert, able to perch on a branch, hop around. These guys are healthy. They're okay to be out in the wild. Mom and dad are probably nearby, almost guaranteed. If you find them in the middle of the road, we can help them by scooping them up and moving them to a safe space. If we find them in our window well, we can scoop them up, move them to a bush. When a bird does need help is when we can see skin. It doesn't have all its feathers. When a bird's not feeling well, they look quite sleepy, eyes closed, poofed up. And birds develop in 2 different ways, right? We kind of saw this with robins who are in a nest and ducklings who Margot was able to walk her whole family away a couple hours after they hatched. So all of the fluffy guys, the goslings and the ducklings, they're able to walk when they're 1 day old, but they still need to be with mom and dad until they could fly. So if they're fluffy with no parents, that's when they need help as well. So we can kind of fix nests and try to move baby birds close to their mom and dad. There's lots of things we can do to help reunite the families and not be a bird napper. And we really appreciate every rescuer that kind of takes the time to observe and to understand what they're looking at and what species and whether that bird needs help or not. And more birds we can keep with mom and dad is a huge win for everyone. If you do need to capture an injured bird, the towel, blanket, sweater, anything you could throw over the bird is your best tool. When a bird is covered, they're much more calm. You still need to be mindful of the danger areas if you're picking up an owl or something, but a towel over a duck or a gull certainly protects you. The birds struggle less. We're picking up their whole body all together instead of just grabbing and maybe only getting a wing or a leg. And then you need to use a secure box for transport. Cardboard box with a little tape on top, or a cat carrier is great. I cannot stress secure enough. And I love showing this picture of a very young self of mine. A cardboard box might not be sufficient for a woodpecker or an owl. The snowy owl was nearly out of the box before it got to the center. So the last thing we want is a bird flying loose in your car. Please consider your safety first. It's not always possible to stop traffic and save those ducklings, or to pick up an owl if we're not prepared. But when it is possible, please protect yourselves first, and we can get that bird some care. And please don't feed a bird. I know everyone's like, oh, I gotta feed it, it needs food, it needs food, it needs water. But the opening of a bird's airway is at the base of their tongue. And if we put water in their mouth, even drips on the beak, and they're not ready to swallow, their body's not ready to digest food, we can really cause a lot more harm than good. We are open every single day of the year. We are currently at 734 Moody Drive, and we are the first one to come up on Google if you Google wild bird care or injured wild bird. And just in a short time, probably next week, we will be announcing a temporary location that's just down the road from where we are until our new building is built. But definitely we will be in the west end of Ottawa, and we're there every single day for any bird that needs help. So, wow, look at me, I'm right on time. That's fantastic.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Patty. So we do have a couple of questions, although I think pretty much throughout your presentation, you've been answering all the questions that we keep getting in. So you may be repeating yourself, but we'll see what we can do. So we have one in the chat. Is it legal to keep duck eggs until they hatch?
Yes, technically. So we're really not allowed to disturb any nests out there. We shouldn't be collecting eggs. Ducks are protected by the laws. So if it is wild duck eggs, they should not be collected from the wild and incubated by people.
Okay, good to know. Now this is a bit of one of those what we hear growing up. Is it true that if I touch a baby bird and put it back in its nest, its mother won't come back for it?
Oh, thank you for asking that, because I usually say that. It's a lie, everyone, it's a lie. Complete lie. Birds don't have a sense of smell. It's worse than ours, except for a turkey vulture. That's the exception. But all the other birds would never smell that a human has touched their baby. However, they're always watching, right? So yes, we can fix a nest that's fallen over. We can move a fledgling to a safer spot, but then please back away a very good distance, grab your binoculars, and watch that mom and dad return. Not by smell. It doesn't matter to them.
Okay, so we'll remember that from here on out. We'll teach our children that was just a myth.
I know.
How do we reach people if they do find an injured bird? Are you available on weekends?
Yes, we are open every single day of the year from 8 until 4. If we're not open, we just ask people to keep that bird in a secure, dark, quiet box for the evening. And if you think about it, I know people panic like, oh my goodness, I can't get the bird help till the next morning. I can't feed it anything. If you think about it, when the sun goes down, the birds also go to sleep. So birds are not really out there flying around or finding food at nighttime. They are resting as well. So if it's after our hours, just keep them calm, dark, quiet until we open the next day.
Perfect. Good to know. Good to know. And then with that, it's a similar question. If I find an injured bird, what should I do? What should I feed it, if anything?
Yeah. Yes, please no food. The most we suggest offering is a shallow dish of water. And by shallow, I mean like think bottle cap from a water bottle. We don't want them to get too wet or fall over into it, but never put food in their mouth. A bird is not going to starve within 24 hours. And you can definitely reach us by phone or email within that time, and we can give you further instructions if it's going to be longer than that time to get it to us.
Perfect. Okie doke. Yeah, I think if you find any kind of wildlife, you just go into panic mode. But
Mhm.
but it's good to to know that within 24 hours they should be okay. So that's good. Um, so have the local birds we see in our backyards adapted to other wildlife and predators compared to birds that are passing by, Ottawa, like the flamingo, as you mentioned, which is such a wild story. I can't even imagine. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say definitely. Like you don't really see that rare bird in your backyard very often. If it is, it's just passing through. Even amongst the species of birds that we do see, we kind of make a joke sometimes at the center. Is this going to be a French fry gull or a fish gull? Right. So we definitely have seagulls that, seagulls, ring-billed gulls that love McDonald's, and then ring-billed gulls that really don't come into town. And we find dietary differences with them in our care. So the birds in our neighborhoods have adapted to our houses and locations and things like that. But with that said, our landscape is changing constantly. You think about
Right.
a bird leaving in the fall and coming back, well, Barrhaven is twice as big now.
That's true. Yeah, you never think about the wildlife that they get to have a nice, winter break out somewhere hot and then come back and then our city's changed. Um, so you did address this, but so what happens to the nest that's created in an inconvenient spot near my house? So from what I gather, leave it until nesting season's over, but if it's there afterwards or before, or
Once it's not active, you could take it down. And if you really didn't enjoy the experience of a robin nesting on your downspout or on your front door, be aware next year because birds do reuse the nest, right? So if it wasn't your cup of tea, be on your toes next spring to put out those moving in the wind deterrents or something like that. But yeah, until then, just leave it be. It's a wonderful experience watching them grow up.
we could tell that you have such a passion for birds. It's wonderful to see. So another question, I just lost it. Are there second floor windows? Are second floor windows a hazard for birds?
Yes, I would say definitely check out the Safe Wings website for more information. Again, those windows would be tricky to put things on, right? So, but if you look at what's around your house, if you've got a big maple tree out front in your yard and you're in a 2 or 3 story house, go out one day and look at your house, especially when the sun is shining on it. If it's reflecting that tree, that's a pretty dangerous window for birds. So birds are hitting windows because they can't really understand or see glass, and it's reflecting like a mirror. So if you go out and see a huge reflection of trees and skies, I would say definitely that window is at risk, and definitely reach out to Safe Wings to see what you can do.
Right. And we've had some presentations talking about, how to create some sort of the safe glass. Yeah, in our buildings, in our offices, and our houses as well. So definitely check that out. So question coming in, do chickadees use the same nest year after year?
Yes,
Cool.
they can, and I'm so disappointed this year because the chickadees chose my neighbor's stump that's only 2 feet off the ground for the second year in a row instead of my beautiful new birdhouse that's in my front yard. But that's okay. But if you are putting out birdhouses, so chickadees do nest inside of tree trunks, so they are a species we can help by putting up a small birdhouse. They do like some housekeeping, so clean that birdhouse out in the early spring. Now, I say early spring because they also might use that birdhouse as a shelter in the wintertime, and they would probably
Right.
appreciate some nesting material in there. But yeah, a little housekeeping early spring, get it all fresh and clean for them.
Some
Bedside.
spring cleaning even for the birds.
You got it.
All right, so we have one coming in. How common are owl sightings in the Ottawa area?
Fairly common, but I'm not going to tell you where they are.
Right.
Yeah, everyone loves owls. We do have owls all over the city, even in the small green spaces. There's definitely owls nesting. The concern is that the more people know about where they are, the bigger concern it is for their health, and not just for us observing them, and being kind of in their territory. But you have to think of yourself, every time you walk into a forest, you're changing a lot. You're changing all of their food habits that's going on. All the mice are aware of where you are and things like that. So stopping at that owl's nest for an hour to watch them is not just putting stress on them, but it's putting stress on the whole ecosystem that they depend on. So you'll find that a lot of the birding sites do not report where owls are for this reason. But I will give you a tip to find owls.
Okay.
Listen for angry crows, because crows do not like owls and they will caw loudly if they find one. So if you have a whole bunch of crows cawing in one tree, there's likely an owl or a hawk. And come the winter time, as you're driving along, we do have snowy owls that migrate down here. Late afternoon, you want to be scanning anything high. You don't even need to be out in the farmlands around Ottawa. I've seen snowy owls on the top of highway signs, on the top of lampposts. So as you're driving along, it's always great to just scan over the fields, any posts or tall trees, highway signs, and you might spot an owl one day.
That's super duper cool. And with that, it's 8 o'clock. So I want to thank everyone for coming out to tonight's program. Thank you so much, Patty. That was wonderful. Love seeing the enthusiasm and the videos and the pictures. And I think we all definitely learned something new or just good information to revisit. All the Urban Wildlife series will be on the Ottawa Public Library Facebook page, so you can always check that out. And for more information for anything related to birds or anything else, check out the Ottawa Public Library website at biblioottawalibrary.ca. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Thank you again, Patty.
Bye.